February 2022 and I'm by the confluence of the Darm and Spree in Köpenick, deep within the former East Berlin, on a trip to discover what traces of the old East Germany remain. Less DDR, more DDWhere. The centre of the old East German capital was the area around Alexanderplatz, and nearby the Palast der Republik, the Parliament of the German Democratic Republic. I first came to Berlin in 2004 and then again in 2006 and 2008, and over that time witnessed the slow demolition of the former Parliament building, and with its demolition the uncovering of remains of the Berliner Schloss that it was built on top of. Painstakingly, over the last near decade from 2013, a reconstruction of the main residence of the House of Hohenzollern has risen from the rubble of war and Soviet-inspired planning to once again stand over the unified city of Berlin. Today, rather than a palace closed off to the royal family and the elite, the Humboldt Forum, as it's now called, is a spectacular arts and museum space, housing a wide range of exhibitions drawn from the collections of the Berlin museums. The palace survived the collapse of the monarchy, and during the Weimar Republic, the space was turned into a museum. It survived until February 1945, pretty much unscathed by the war unleashed from the city by the Nazis. But on the 24th of February, with air defences and firefighting systems of Berlin destroyed, the building was hit by an incendiary bomb. Its roof was destroyed in the fire, and the building became a burnt-out shell. The incoming government of the DDR declared it a symbol of Prussian militarism, and through the perhaps imprudent use of 19 tons of dynamite, the building was finally brought to the ground in 1950. That land cleared and used as a parade ground until the GDR Parliament building was constructed in the late 1970s. Descending down into the Schlosskeller of the Humboldt Forum, you can see the last surviving parts of the old palace. With the main building down, rubble could be bulldozed into the cellars to level off the ground, so these walls survived. From where you could once stand above them and look down on them, you can now walk amongst them. At the other extremity of the building, you can take the lift to the roof and walk out onto one of the best vistas of the city. From 1443 until the end of the monarchy in 1918, the Berliner Schloss was the centre of power over their lands. But following the communist takeover of East Germany, the silent power shifted 6 kilometres east to the Lichtenberg area of the city, and the unassuming buildings of the Ministry for State Security, Staatssicherheitsdienst, or more commonly known as the Stasi, the internal secret police who held East German citizens in fear. Their former headquarters is now a museum, in part to how they operated in their history, as well as a reminder of their greatest failure. On the 7th of October 1989, the state held a giant party with military parades to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the formation of the DDR. Less than 5 weeks later, the citizens would be having their own party on top of a Berlin Wall as the staff of the Stasi offices desperately tried to shred, burn, and in any other way destroy evidence of their 32 years of crimes against the population. In January 1989, the idea of a tourist from a capitalist West wandering through the offices of Erich Michel, the head of the Stasi, taking photos at will would have been unthinkable. Today, the office is preserved as it would have been in the days prior to the collapse of the system. And nearby is the conference room, where you can almost imagine the well-deserved feelings of terror and panic that was finally visited on the Stasi top brass as they realised they no longer held any power and the best outcome would be a lengthy prison sentence. Less than 2 miles from the Stasi headquarters is another reminder of the once divided capital. Prior to World War II, Berliners had flocked to their zoo for nearly 100 years, but when the wall went up, the zoo was very much verboten for the East Berliners. So instead, a new zoo was built in the grounds for the former Friedrichsfeld Palace, and it opened in 1955. Whilst there were discussions about closing down the park, after all, most major cities can barely support one zoo, let alone two, in the 1990s, work was undertaken to rehabilitate and renovate the zoo. Changes to animals kept mean the two zoos now complement each other, and consequently, the space available for animals is better than some city centre zoos, as each zoo houses fewer animals. Seven and a half kilometres southeast of the Tierpark is the suburb of Köpenick. Located on the confluence of the Darm and Spree rivers, this was an independent town until it was swallowed up by the ever-expanding Berlin in 1920 and incorporated into the German capital. Its history as being a rural location is shown by the Schloss Köpenick. Originally built in 1558 as a hunting lodge for the Elector of Brandenburg, it was expanded in 1677 by Frederick I of Prussia. Its time as a palace of importance was short-lived, and it soon fell into obscurity. In the 1960s, the palace was taken over by the East German state and turned into a museum. Today it houses the Museum of Decorative Arts, part of the Berlin Museums. This includes examples of interior design from the 16th to 18th century, which means the style of rooms change quite dramatically as you walk through the palace. parliament. Many of the major construction projects of the DDR have been wiped from the map. But one structure has survived in the 21st century, and it's the most visible of Berlin's iconic buildings, the Fernsehturm, or TV Tower, on Alexanderplatz. At 368 metres, it's also the fourth tallest freestanding structure in Europe. And from the top, there's stunning views, particularly at sunset, over a city that after a tumultuous 20th century has successfully stitched itself back together. When I first visited in 2004, the line of the Berlin Wall was still clearly visible as a scar through the city. East and west were instantly identifiable, and adding to that was the scar of the U5 construction works that ran down from Brandenburg Gate to Alexanderplatz in a never-ending delayed project that, along with Berlin-Brandenburg Airport, helped to damage the myth of German efficiency. Today, you have to look very hard to find traces of the wall, and even harder for traces of a regime that ruled for 40 years. The city has repaired and rebuilt itself back together, and with the final opening of both the U5 extension and Berlin-Brandenburg Airport in 2020, the traces of the wounds in the city are healing. Much maligned Berlin-Brandenburg Airport finally opened in 2020, 9 years late, but today its unhappy birth is behind it as it connects Berlin to the rest of the world. There are regular direct flights to most major European cities, as well as North Africa and the Middle East, with regular flights to European hubs of London, Amsterdam, Paris, Frankfurt, Munich and Madrid for global connections to the rest of the world. Berlin Hauptbahnhof is a hub for the German rail network with high-speed ICE connections to most major German cities, regional trains across northern and eastern Germany, as well as international trains across northern and central Europe.